We're joined on stage by Frank Slootman, the CEO of Snowflake, which was just named the #1 startup to work for by LinkedIn, and Glen Tullman, executive chairman at Livongo, which went public earlier this year, ranked the fastest growing tech company in Silicon Valley the last 2 years. And please welcome back to the stage CNBC's Jon Fortt. Jon, welcome again. There you go. It's all yours. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you. Frank, Glen, one of the things I love about this conversation, and welcome, is we got the cloud, we got the edge. We're talking about where the data is being used and put to good use. And I want to start, Frank, with you, because it's not your first rodeo, as they say, with Snowflake. You were CEO of Data Domain. You were CEO of ServiceNow. You've been in this big data arena for a long time. So tell me, where are we from an evolutionary standpoint in big data, and what comes next?
Yeah, so as you said, I was the CEO of ServiceNow, and that whole generation, of products, in my mind, weren't really cloud products. They were really on-premise products that were cloud hosted. There's nothing wrong with that. There's benefit to that, but they were not innately capable of taking advantage of a cloud scale computing fabric that we have, through our public cloud options, AWS and so on. So where we are now is where, we're really getting into a situation where we can take advantage of the unlimited scale, both in terms of storage and in terms of compute. And that opens up enormous possibilities.
And why do we need Snowflake? Because probably everybody in this room knows what you guys do, but when we're talking about large amounts of data, the necessity of being able to analyze that quickly, have it available, how do you enable that?
Yeah, so what Snowflake did, and what appealed to me so much, is that the people that built it, they completely reimagined this thing for the cloud. Because as I just said, so many cloud products are really repackaged on-premise products. So this thing will never run on a private cloud or an on-premise platform. It really looked at the scale of a cloud computing fabric and said, I can use all of that, right? I can have petabyte scale data, and I can deploy unlimited numbers of clusters to execute against the same data at the same time. So there's no longer hard boundaries in terms of your ability to find that signal in the noise. Very exciting. I spent 35 years in enterprise software, and we're always sort of live with the constraints of the hardware in terms of what we could and couldn't do. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, it just completely opened up now.
Speaking of signal, there's arguably no more important signal than health signals. What you guys are doing at Livongo, Glen, is aiming to better treat chronic conditions. Talk about how data has revamped the potential outcomes. We actually started off today talking about something along these lines with Bernard Tyson of Kaiser.
Well, I think at Livongo, what we're doing is empowering people with chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension and behavioral health issues to live better. And we're doing that using their health signals. So we think of ourselves as an applied health signals company. And what does that really mean? We've all heard about AI for a long time, and I've been somewhat frustrated that it's never come to healthcare. And so we've seen it if you think about it, in content. We've seen it in community with Facebook, and content with Google. We've seen it in commerce with Amazon, but we've never seen those signals used in the same way to help us have better health. And that's really what we're doing at Livongo, because we're not just aggregating the information and interpreting it. That's what a lot of people have done, but we're then applying it. We're delivering it back on the edge, as you talk about, to individuals, and we're seeing what works and what doesn't.
And you're collecting the data at the edge, too. I mean, wearables are a big piece of this, and the ability to have devices in the home that are sending that signal to Livongo.
Everything is connected, so whether it's a connected meter, blood glucose meter, whether it's a continuous glucose monitor that people are wearing, whether it's a connected blood pressure cuff, everything is connected so we can see what works and what works for everyone. Healthcare is not only local, it's personalized and individual. individualized. So what works is going to be different for you as opposed to someone else, as opposed to a 69-year-old woman, as opposed to a 22-year-old male. And
I mean, I'm not 22 anymore?
I wasn't exactly saying, but
it's true.
But I think what it really does is it allows us to analyze those health signals, deliver them back, and improve people's behavior in a measurable way.
Where do you keep the data?
We're using AWS, we're using Amazon Web Services, but I think what's important is healthcare data is probably different from any other data, and that is every one of our members actually controls how we use the data and how that data is distributed. So they're in complete charge of their own health data, which is what we believe should always happen. And then it's used in various ways to improve their own health.
Frank, you have a front row seat to the process that a lot of companies are going through in what we keep calling cloud transformation. What are some of the mistakes that you see companies making? They know they want Snowflake maybe, they want faster access to their data, they're excited about what they're going to be able to do with it. What mistakes are they making?
Well, number one is to what extent are we embracing public cloud? Because institutions are still hanging back, using all the excuses of privacy and security for not to go. But
still?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I tell them is time is not your friend, right? Because the more time that goes by, sooner or later you're going to have to pull that trigger, and you're going to have to learn how to manage security, how to manage privacy, and how to live in a public cloud, right? As opposed to resist it. It's not going away. It's the only way, to move forward.
Are we talking just regulated industries here? Because the word that I had heard was that, everybody kind of embraces that the security is better when there's a specialist handling it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's some hybrid, but people aren't scared of the cloud anymore. They're still scared.
The magic word is PII. You drop the word PII, personally identifiable information, and everybody just starts backing into their respective corners, because that's sort of the scariest part of all, and all the liability caps go up and so on. But the second aspect is this whole notion of latency. In other words, how fast is the data being processed, and can it be acted on programmatically? Because a lot of people still get into this world where we're trying to populate dashboards, get information to people. That's completely yesteryear, right? What we're going for now is the data is programmatically being acted upon the moment the data originates. I mean, you're walking by a store, you're buying something, you're opening up an app, the system is literally processing as it happens, and that almost near zero latency notion. A lot of data-first companies out there, companies that were really created to be completely data-driven, they already do that. But you go to the Global 2000, Fortune 500, this is still a very novel concept to them. And we've seen customers where we brought data from 3 weeks to 3 minutes, changes their complete perspective on what's possible.
I want to open it up to questions, so have them ready. I'll tell you early this time, so I don't get the crunch at the end. But Glenn, as I'm doing that, how did you get over that hump? Because the data that you have, talk about personally identifiable. Not only is it that, but sometimes you have data that's so private that the user doesn't even know it.
That's right.
You know what it is, right? So
I think there's two issues there. One, there's a privacy issue, and two, there is a speed. We're right on the edge. So when someone's checking their blood sugar, if we want to give them a health nudge, if we want to give them insights and information that we're delivering, we have to do that real time. We have 30 seconds maybe of their attention, and then they're moved on to live the rest of their life. Interestingly, Livongo, the name came from living on the go. And what people said is, I just want to live my life. I don't want to be a person with diabetes or a person with hypertension. I want to live my life, and I'm on the go. So do it fast, meet me where I am at that point, and tell me what I need to know. Don't give me data, give me the answer.
How did you get over the public cloud hump? Given the concerns that some of the companies that Frank talked to have. I mean, granted, you're in a different position of being a newer company, but legacy companies struggle with this.
Sure. Well, one, we are newer. We could design with a lot of the aspects Frank was talking about designed in. And in healthcare, you have to start with privacy. You have to start with security. My last company was an electronic health record company, so we already had a great basis in understanding what the issues were, And then to be able to build it from the ground up was a real benefit for us. And then second, we controlled, at least in the beginning, they were proprietary devices. So we could have a lot more control over security protocols and the like. And last but not least, we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. And interestingly, a lot of people say, well, if you're in Mountain View, you're right down the road from Google and everyone else, how in the world do you recruit? And the answer is they come to us because people are increasingly saying, we want to work at a company that's making a difference and making a difference in healthcare. And so we're getting the top data engineers, the top data scientists. About a third of our company are data scientists, behavioral scientists, and software engineers. So I think that's a different profile, even for Silicon Valley, than most companies would be.
We've got mic runners here and here, and they are fast. I mean, my man here is actually running. Yeah, see, there he goes. Question.
Hey, this is Ramana. I lead global engineering at Fanatics. My question is more around, I know we talk a lot about big data, storing this big data and processing and using it and applying it. One of the serious problems I'm sure many companies are facing is around the data quality aspect of the data, especially when you have a lot of legacy systems, a lot of legacy architecture and infrastructure. So what's your take on how companies are dealing with it or need to deal with it? Thank you.
For you, yeah.
So I will tell you that the people that we talk to, they view data preparation, data transformation, data curation, is getting data ready. It's like 80% of the effort and the cost. It is just enormous, right? And it's, for example, you go into a hedge fund these days, it's like 90% data science people now as opposed to fundamental analysts, and it's very, very tedious, difficult work to do it. Once the data is in good shape, it becomes extraordinarily potent, right? But in order to get there, it's time-consuming, it's expensive, all these kinds of things. There is an entire industry in terms of technologies, the ETL and ELTs companies of the world, and then there are all the integrator companies that work with them, to help facilitate that. There's no getting around that the quality of data is a huge thing, and those investments are being made because people are perceiving enormous value. For example, take another hedge fund, right? They buy a company or they buy into a company. Then they start buying the data around these companies so that they can understand them better than the market at large, right? So they can make better decisions in terms of buying and selling.
For example, when you say buying the data around the company, what do you mean?
No, I'll give you an example. For example, you say you invest in a company like DoorDash, food delivery. What they do is, they literally have the data available to see, I'll punch up a zip code in LA and they can see who has the market share, whether it's Uber Eats or DoorDash or anybody else like that, and can see market share by restaurant. So they actually have better insight than anybody else has in whether the business is going up, down, sideways, whether winning, whether losing. It is extremely refined, how detailed and how actionable and how real-time their insights are into those businesses. It's not like, hey, I like DoorDash. No, it's like I buy DoorDash and then I buy the data that lets me manage my investment.
Glenn, do you have data quality challenges? Because I always imagine that newer companies that are dealing with newer devices, it's all just beautiful. The data comes in just squeaky clean and gets into the right cell in the database. Is it really that way, or do you struggle with this too?
Well, I think there's a mix. Again, when the data is coming off, somebody checks their blood sugar, we have the exact data coming from their body in real time. And so we quickly were able to accumulate the largest blood glucose database in the world of real-time and near real-time data. And that is tremendously valuable. On the other hand, if you take information from electronic health records or other kinds of sources, you have dating, time issues, you have quality issues and the like. And so our data is primarily driven from direct devices that we're getting from individuals, and then we're returning information. The beauty is if you can close the loop, it's kind of like when Amazon says, you're going to like a book like this, and they get it right. And you say, how can they get it right so much? Because they've been able to close the loop, and we're able to close the loop there. So that helps in terms of data, and I think that going back and cleaning data is about 10x, maybe you'll tell me 100x more expensive than actually getting the data yourselves in a pure form. Yeah. And that's what we do. And then we have to translate that data, which is not very valuable, into usable information. And so we think of not big data, but bite-sized information that people can consume.
It sounds like it is as clean as I thought. More of your questions? While you generate them, Frank, I want you to talk more about where we're headed, because we tend to see where we've been more with big data. But say 5 years from now, the leading edge companies, what are they going to be demanding from you? What are the challenges, perhaps, that for many are unforeseen that you think they're going to be running into? We've got a lot of promise around things like machine learning, AI. Will it have lived up to that, or will there be sort of a recalibration of expectation?
We're still relatively early days on data sciences. We're doing fairly rudimentary things, but where we're going is becoming pretty visible. You know, people like Spotify, right? I mean, the investments that they're making to understand what your music preferences are, the season, the time of day, and for them to be able to guess, you know, what you're going to want to listen to. You know, you're pulling up to a McDonald's, you know, what are you going to feel like eating, you know? And so
Spotify's pretty bad for me, actually. Like, they're not doing a good job, but they're recommending songs that I already listened to.
Let them know, yeah.
And I'm like, I know I like that.
Yeah.
Why are you making a playlist for me of songs I already have in a playlist? Like, that doesn't help me.
Maybe you just want to listen to it again. Yeah.
I don't, though.
Okay.
Like, you're supposed to.
I don't work for Spotify.
Yeah,
but
but
I did, so.
Anybody else experiencing this? I don't know.
But it's like data scientists are trying to discern, you know, things about you that, you know, obviously you may not even know, you know, about yourself. It's not this thing where, okay, I'm going to a website and for the next 5 days I'm getting bombarded, you know, with ads. That's very crude, you know, way of pursuing that. It's going to become much more subtle. But the near real-time nature of processing data and systems taking action on it programmatically, and there's no longer people involved. Enterprises are becoming completely digital in the sense that, you know, they don't have sales forces, they don't have call centers, they operate completely, and we've learned that from the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, how that works. I saw a financial institution the other day, and, you know, they buy data around life events. Life events are, you know, somebody dies, somebody gets divorced, somebody loses their job. Life events, and they act on that programmatically, right? And they reach out with financial products depending on what your circumstance in life is. They generate hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue without a person ever getting involved. It's completely data-driven. That's already happening today. I'm not even projecting 5 years out, but you can just go like, wow. I mean, everything turns into a cloud experience. Everything turns into a fully data-driven digital process.
Yeah.
That's definitely where we're trying to go.
Yeah, and plenty of, I guess, privacy challenges potentially along with that. I'll check again for your questions. I see a hand back in the back.
Yeah, so one of the things you see on these engines is they frequently take cues on things that I don't want to know about. So let's say I'm on a website and I'm looking at travel, and it's inevitable that I get 40 ads for the exact trip I was just looking at, telling me I want to buy something. So do you think that there's areas where people self-select what they're interested in, where it's already defined? Like, for example, people who like good restaurants, they probably are already seeking this information, versus the areas where you're describing where they actually don't know their own interests that you described. Could you give me a little more color on what do you mean by finding out something that is something that would be characteristic to a person's interest that they wouldn't know about?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think what you're seeing there is the early stages of where AI is being applied in a very kind of generic way. And, you know, there's this great quote that says, technology perfectly applied is indistinguishable from magic. So we're monitoring people 24 hours a day, and sometimes they have a dangerously low or dangerously high blood sugar. And we will call them within 60 seconds. And at that moment, they say things like, you called at the perfect time, or how did you know? And the reason we knew, because there was a light blinking and it was red, and we called them. But we were there in the exact moment they knew. I'll give you another example. I have no association to GE, but I do have a dishwasher that wasn't working. And so I knew how to solve this problem. I kind of crawled inside and I took a picture of the model number because I knew I would be asked that. And I looked at my phone, but my phone did not show the picture I took. There was a QR code, a quick response code. it went to GE's website and it says there's only 2 reasons you would have taken this picture. One reason is you need a replacement part, and the other one is you need to have it repaired. Which one is it? So I pressed repair, and lo and behold, it said we can be there next Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Now, this was magical to me. So I said Tuesday, and then we were done. And I went to work, and I told everyone about it, and they said, well, what does it cost? I said, I had no idea. No idea, because the service was so good in that experience. But to me, that was somebody, one, designing a better process, and then figuring out where it should be applied and when it should be applied. So when we get bombarded when it doesn't feel right, that means the AI hasn't been developed enough. And when it's really done well, it just seems like magic. Like, how did they know exactly what I would want? Or, you know, when you get something and it didn't come with something you need, you know, then you know that it's not working well. So I think we're at the early stages.
I would think that the third reason would be you want to buy another one. So that makes me kind of sad that GE only gave you those 2 reasons. But maybe they know their product better than I do.
This was new.
Yeah. Frank, final thoughts. We're at that point. Advice that you would give to companies that are on that journey. I think a lot of the ones in this room are not just looking to start it, but are on that journey into the public cloud and looking to get the most use out of it. Besides the storage portion, what kind of either warnings, advice would you give on how to think about the process and future-proofing it?
Well, like I said earlier, you know, job one is, you know, start thinking about getting your data to the cloud, because there's not much we can do at scale, you know, without it. You know, secondly, you sort of got to get out of that mode where, you know, data informs versus data drives, right? Mm-hmm. And taking a data drive, and it's a perfect example of data driving that Glen just gave, right? Data drives, right? Forget people in the middle, right? Think programmatically about taking actions.
Good advice, Glen. Your advice as someone who's working with largely squeaky clean data, but trying to push ahead in the possibilities?
Well, I think that, again, we're going to get better and better at using this technology to do what's important for people. And we have to carefully navigate that curve of not going too far, not feeling creepy, but being there when people need us. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. I also agree that good software takes the middle out. So, you know, anything you're going to do, if someone is trying to decide that, we should have systems that can allow us to do that in a more complete way. And in healthcare, there's nothing more important, because today, you know, if you think about all the investment in healthcare, it's more confusing, more complex, and more costly than ever before. And that's the experience most people have. And what we've tried to do is use a combination of behavioral design and data science and actually good old-fashioned people, and combine those in a way that change the experience, that put people back in charge of their health care.
Right.
I think we're going to see that across every industry, which is people are going to feel more in charge of what they're doing, and that's going to fundamentally change a lot of different industries.
Though in your industry, in your company, you're one of the few. If you're genuinely saving my life, you can be as creepy as you want. Mm-hmm. And I feel that. Guys, thank you.